Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie and I have been binge watching American Horror Story and I've literally just finished watching 1984. Please bear with me, I've got an incredibly sore throat at the moment and I've been coughing lots, so I'll do my best to edit out all the coughs where I can, but I have got lots of water and stand by here. So yeah, 1984. The 9th season of American Horror Story. Returning cast members include Emma Roberts, Billy Lord, Leslie Grossman, Cody Fern, John Carroll Lynch, Leslie Jordan, Tanya Clark, Lily Rabe, Dylan McDermott and Finn Whitrock, alongside new cast members Matthew Morrison, Gus Kenworthy, Angelica Ross and Zach Villa. 1984 marks the first season to not feature Evan Peters or Sarah Paulson. I'll admit I kept expecting them to show up, but no, they weren't there. So you've got Emma Roberts as Brooke, Billy Lord as Montana, Leslie Grossman as Margaret, Cody Fern as Xavier, Matthew Morrison as Trevor, Gus Kenworthy as Chet, John Carroll Lynch as Benjamin Richter / Mr. Jingles, with Angelica Ross as Donna Chambers and Zach Villa as Richard Ramirez. Going in, the first episode just made me think, and to be honest, by the time I got to the end of the season, it just made me think of Friday the 13th, which is kind of ironic and a coincidence because my chosen horror movie of this year, because I watch a classic horror movie every year around about Halloween time, and the one that I watched this year was Friday the 13th, so it seemed very apt to then start watching 1984 and realise the amount of similarities and homages, I guess, to the classic 80s thriller slasher horror movies, especially Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th seemed to be the main one. I think lots of comparisons to the original Halloween film as well. The season starts in 1970 at Camp Redwood, which is a summer camp in California. You got 3 camp counsellors getting ready to have sexy times when a serial killer comes in and kills them and cuts their ears off. And then you see everybody else dying, but you don't see who the murderer is. Straight away, I was getting the beginning of Friday the 13th, and it then jumps forward to the middle of the 80s, 84 to be precise, where you meet Brooke Thompson, who is played by Emma Roberts. Now, I will say, as you can hear, my throat is just going away from me. I will say, I think this is the first time I've seen Emma Roberts playing a truly sympathetic character. Just the things that I have seen her in, she's always played quite bitchy roles, so this is the first time to actually see it in a role where, even to the end, she's seen as one of the good guys. Even on other seasons of American Horror Story, there's always been bitchy undertones to her characters, whether you think her as a goodie or a baddie. She's always never had the best intentions, the characters I'm talking about. Leslie Grossman as Margaret. I mean, I will say, because the first time I ever saw Leslie Grossman in anything was in the Amanda Bynes sitcom, what's it called, What I Like About You? And so that was my first introduction to Leslie Grossman as kind of like the funny sidekick. So to see her doing stuff where she is playing truly terrible people is great, because you just realise how good she is. And I think American Horror Story was the first time I've seen her in anything outside of that one sitcom from the early to mid-noughties. I will say, I think there's one weak link among the cast at all, actually. Sarah Paulson was originally going to appear in 1984, but it actually clashed with her commitment to the Netflix series Ratched. So I've never seen Ratched, actually. This was like a proper, almost like love letter to 80s horror movies, which I was kind of living for based on my experience of 80s horror movies so far. So if you know a Friday the 13th film, you'll have a general gist of what this season is about. It's about camp that's kind of cursed in a way, and there's multiple deaths over the years on this one area. It starts in 1970, then it jumps to 1984, then at one point it jumps to 1989, and then you see sometime in the 90s until you eventually end up present day 2019 at the very, very end of the season. The main antagonist, as you were, of the series is Benjamin Richter / Mr. Jingles. Mr. Jingles is kind of known for, he's infamous for murdering everybody at the camp. That's the easiest way to describe it. He's known for terrorising everybody. You do later find out that 1970 isn't the first time that somebody dies at the camp, but that goes into spoiler territory, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. But then you realise there's a certain character that's kind of been in there since the beginning. The person who you end up thinking is the ultimate baddie is actually fairly innocent in everything and has been manipulated by a lot of people. So the person that you think is the baddie isn't the real baddie. There is one person who is the ultimate person. There is a bit of paranormal type stuff in there, which kind of ties into the last season a bit, because there's talks of like pledging your life to the devil type thing, and you realise that there's one character who, when they are killed, they come back, and then you start to realise the whole place is kind of a purgatory type situation. It's a bit of a limbo for the people who have died at the camp. It's reminiscent of the very first season with the murder house, because anybody who is killed in the camp stays inside the camp. Like in Murder House, anybody who's killed in the house, or, you know, anything that's like on the house property, on like the property line, stays there for eternity. So that's what happens here. When they die, they stay there, and it's their own personal limbo, and people can see the ghosts. Though in this case, it's not like they can just make themselves appear to people. I think they kind of do, actually. But it just seems like that everybody can see the ghosts when they're on the land. They just don't know that they are ghosts. And it comes a point when they're just murdering everybody that comes onto the site. It's just like, you get the point that it's cursed, but there's only like one or two characters there saying, do we really have to kill everybody that comes here? And they're going, well, it's better than doing nothing for all this time. Billie Lourd as Montana, she just encapsulates that character completely. She's really good at playing a baddie. Yeah, I think at the end you realise that Montana's not quite a baddie as some other people, but the character of Montana is a bitch. Based on stuff that I've seen from them before, I almost wonder what it would have been like if Billie Lourd had played Brooke and Emma Roberts had played Montana, because I think that would have been an interesting way to see it. But I think by purposely doing it the other way round, it really lets them shine in characters that you haven't really seen them do before. Because I'll admit, even though Billie Lourd has played baddie-esque type characters in American Horror Story, we haven't seen her as a Montana type, and it was really fun to watch. John Carroll Lynch as Mr. Jingles and Benjamin, he brings out a side of that character that you just never expected to see in the beginning. It does have to do with the character's arc, as you would call it, because you're first introduced to him as Mr. Jingles, as this person who has been terrorising the camp since the 1970s. Because in the 1970s they believe that it's Mr. Jingles that's killed everybody, and then in the 80s they think it's Mr. Jingles that has come back. And you do see Mr. Jingles at the camp in the 80s and in the 70s through the flashbacks. And then you realise as the series goes on, through the flashbacks, you realise that Mr. Jingles was originally a young boy called Benjamin, who went to the camp in the 70s, and you realise that he was there with some other characters who you see in the 80s, including Margaret, played by Leslie Grossman. It really is just a complete homage to Friday the 13th, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure there's other horror movies in there, but because I just recently watched Friday the 13th, that was just very much on my mind as I watched the season. I'll admit, I think at the beginning it felt like a bit of a slow start. I think it was just because it was so similar to Friday the 13th in the beginning that I was just like, I feel like I don't need to watch this because I technically already have. And in the first episode, it's around a campfire that the counsellors find out about Mr. Jingles, and then Margaret reveals that she was the sole survivor of that night. The thing that for me was the grossest part of all of this was the ear thing, where the killer chops their ears off every single time they kill somebody. It's their token, as you will. But yeah, it's the token that they take every single time they make a kill. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the higher death counts of all the seasons, just because it felt like about 100 people were dying per episode. By the end, and you see all these ears just building up, and you're just like, there's a lot of people who have died this season. And that's saying something, considering in Apocalypse they pretty much killed everybody and then brought them back. There is also a bit of a sideways red herring type thing with the Night Stalker that comes in at the end of episode 1, but then it all comes back to Mr. Jingles. It is just really good. You know, it's just proper classic horror stuff, which is what a lot of people probably just wanted out of American Horror Story to begin with. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think anything is actually based on anything real in this season. At least not that I was aware of. For me, just, I think the main story going through this was the origins of Mr. Jingles, what happened to him as a kid, and then finding out what happened before, when you find out about the death that happened before the 70s, and you realise that Benjamin was there from the beginning and he'll be there till the end. That Mr. Jingles storyline really is the heart of the whole thing. There's so much I'm missing out here. I would like to see Leslie Jordan in there as Courtney. I love Leslie Jordan. My first introduction to Leslie Jordan was when he played Beverly Leslie on Will and Grace, and I've always thought he's just an amazing comedian. He brings the laughs in here as well. He's the one who's just like, wait, why are we continuing to buy all these horrible places based on like real life murders and things, and why are we turning them into breakfasts and hotels and experiences and things? He's the straight man in all of this. He's the one who's just saying why. And so by the end, because I'll admit, this is another one where pretty much everybody dies. The final episode is literally called The Final Girl. You're trying to figure out who is left. Was there anybody who actually survived the whole thing? When you come to the end of the season, it kind of comes full circle. When you go back to the very origins of the story, well, not just episode 1, but when you're looking at what happened with the first death at this camp, it's all connected to the Richter family. And so later, when you start to meet everybody else in the Richter family, you meet Benjamin's brother, you meet his mother, played by the fantastical Lily Rabe. It was so nice to see Lily Rabe pop in there, because there was a point when I was thinking she wasn't going to show up, but she does. And Lily Rabe as Lavinia is just perfection. I'm seriously in love with Lily Rabe now. She's just so good. You can say it with me. I feel like I've said so much, but I feel like I've said so little. But yeah, if you want that proper 80s horror, you need to watch 1984. It's just, even the opening credits are just, I mean, the beginning of the opening credits is literally just a workout video from the 80s. You've even got Montana as an aerobics enthusiast. There's a whole episode where you see her, well, there's more than one episode where you see her leading like aerobics classes. It's just so 80s. You gotta love it. I mean, I was born in 1989, so I missed the majority of it, but you know, it doesn't mean I can't love it. This top is from the 80s. This was my mother's. This top is older than me, and I'm 32. Anyway, 1984, American Horror Story. It's just classic, what can I say? So the next season I'll be watching is Double Feature. I know nothing about Double Feature, so I have no idea what I'm getting myself into there. I have no idea what Double Feature's about, so that's telling you something. But I am watching it all now on Disney+. The first seasons that I watched were on Netflix, and then there was a point when both 1984 and Double Feature were on Netflix, but it was only for a brief time before Disney Plus took them for their service. Is it Star? No sponsored, no ads, it's just where I'm watching them if you do want to watch them, and that's where they are in the UK. I'm not quite sure for other countries where they'll be, but for me, all of them have been on Netflix, with these last two, 1984 and Double Feature, being on Disney Plus. So do with that information whatever you want. But yeah, that's it. Apparently I need to do my O2 saturation, because as you can tell I'm coughing lots. I have done COVID tests, I have not got COVID, but my parents have gone away for the weekend, and so my sister, it lives about 10 minutes up the road, so I think she's going to keep an eye on me while I'm here. But yeah, as you can hear, my throat is just going. I've been drinking Manuka honey in hot water, and that's helped. I've got some spray which has been helping. I just haven't been sleeping well because I've been coughing lots. But yeah, so that was 1984 American Horror Story. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time with another video. Don't forget to subscribe. Join our family. What should we call this cult? Because it might as well be a cult now. At the moment it's American Horror Story cult because I've got a very obsessive personality. But yeah, so come join my Debbie B cult. Debbie B cult. Yay! Okay, I'm losing it, so let's go. See you later. Mwah! Oh, my battery's about to die. Let's get another one.